Keith Baizer. I'm going to give it a shot here. Thanks for coming. First, I want to talk about something kind of near and dear to me is the AAW. I don't know if all you. So, why join the AAW? What are the benefits of joining the American Association of Woodturners? We'll call it the mothership. Um, what's neat about the AAW, there's 13,000 members, 360 plus chapters worldwide. And when you join, you really have access to 13,000 of the best turners in the world. And when you look in this room, or you look in the whole world of wood turners, the cool thing is that everybody's available. Everybody will share. I've never sent an email or communicated with another wood turner anywhere in the world that didn't get back to me with an answer and become a friend. And so joining the AAW, you're part of this community. You get full access to the website. The website gives you the ability to look up any turner, to look up any chapter. You're going to Iowa, you're going through Chicago, you're going through Kansas City. You can contact the chapter, see when they have meetings, and they'll be happy to have you at their meetings. The website, the magazine's worth the ticket, just the American Woodturner magazine. But you also have access on the website as well to every issue of the American Woodturner for the last, I don't know who's looked 20, 30 years. There were some products for sale Tom talked about. There's some great forums for trading ideas, forums for asking questions. And you're asking questions of people that really know what they're doing, and they're fantastic. And there's a buy-sell forum. So if you have something you want to get rid of, or if you're looking for something specific, it's just a neat community. I've benefited from it. I have friends all over the world from it. And we're all wood turners. We're all passionate about this. So it's something good to think about. So I had a friend come over to my shop, and he's a photographer. So I turned a little bowl, and he emailed me the next day, and he said, "I'm shocked." I said, "What are you talking about?" He said, "I cannot and could not imagine all the steps and all the things that you have to know to just make a little bowl. And everybody in this room, whatever you're making, it's unbelievable what you have to know to make something. And we can say, oh, I just make this, or I make this, or I make this, but it's pretty impressive what it takes to do what we do. And along those lines, I heard something today on a podcast, and what the guy said is it's natural for the creative process to have moments of frustration or even a little bit of hopelessness. Anybody in here been there? Um, and what happens is you see a piece of art that seems simple, and there's a tendency to think it's just simple to make. And simple isn't easy. Simple takes work. And making something that seems simple is very hard. And we all live this. Every time we belly up to this lathe, we live this. Oh, there's a bowl. Oh, great. Well, they don't understand. Most people don't understand what went into this and all the detail that goes into making something. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you a log, the end of a log. This is my chalkboard. And we're going to talk about when I cut it, when I find a tree, how I look at that tree to cut the wood out of that tree to accomplish what I want, to get the pieces to make what I'm making. I make bowls, I make platters, I make all kinds of crazy stuff, goblets, hollow vessels. So I want to talk about how to look at this log. Mark Spheri, who's an amazing turner, very whimsical, much more of a sculptor artist. He said he doesn't use roadkill, and I go, what a great name. So I use roadkill. Roadkill is wood that's laying around. Friend calls, they took a tree down. I know a few tree people that take trees down, arborists, and I call them, hey, what do you have? And so that's what I use. And this is just my way of doing it. There's many ways to look at things. There's many ways to do things. I've been fortunate to have a lot of great experiences in the kind of the wood turning world. And I just take pieces. Life is kind of connect the dots. And I can talk to somebody or take a class or watch a demonstration, just add one more little dot. And, when I watch a demonstration here in this club or anywhere, it's just to try to learn something. You might learn one thing, you might learn two things. It might change the way you think about something. So this is one person's way. It can go wrong. There's a reason there's always an aisle down the middle. It's not because we're at a wedding. It's because generally it's going to fly, it's going to take 3 hops and hit him in the knee. But it's probably not going to happen. It's safety, safety first. So when we decide we're going to wood turn, we decide, hey, I'm going to wood turn. Then what am I going to turn? And everybody turns something different. And then I think the next thing to work on is tool skills, which includes sharpening. And there's no there with this stuff. I mean, I've been trying to learn. I just took a 5-day class from somebody that invented the 40-40 grind on specific grind on a gouge at a specific angle, and I still can't sharpen the thing. 10 years ago, I started trying. So it's a process. There's no there. And anything we're all doing when we're turning, we just try to get a little better, try to get closer to where we want to be. But that's what we do every day. We try to get a little better. So green wood, why green wood? It's free. And it's easier to cut generally, a little less dust. But there are some finicky things that happen. You have to kind of pay attention to what happens with green wood as it dries and as it's sitting in your yard or in your garage or whatever, what happens to it. But when I have wood that's free, I'll push it maybe a little further. I'll try something that I wouldn't try because I'm not looking at a piece of wood and saying I spent $6 on this or $500 or whatever on it. So, because I know that if I mess it up, it didn't cost me anything, and there's another 300 pounds of the log out there, and just hack back in there with the chainsaw and get moving. There are some things, I mean, you have to, have a strong back or a few dollars in your pocket to tip somebody or buy McDonald's for the guys that work at the tree company to put it on your truck. And I say the hardest part of wood turning is getting the wood on the truck. Gravity takes it off, and then you cut it into smaller pieces, and then you put it on the lathe. So we're gonna go through how I kind of look at a log. And what's difficult, as you'll see, is the last time I saw a perfect log, perfectly round, the pith right in the middle, I think it was like in a Bugs Bunny cartoon or something. It's not there. So we have to kind of analyze and look at the wood and get out what we want. And every piece of wood's a snowflake. There's no two alike. So every time we get a slab of wood, even within the same tree, 2 feet further down in the tree, it's different. So we look at it, and that's a step I thought I would never get there. And I'm inching closer to the ability to look at a piece of wood and kind of see what I'm going to get based on what I see on the end of the piece of wood. So what we're looking at here is actually black ash or green ash, and it's really pretty wood, and it's pretty hard wood, a lot harder than cherry, a lot harder than walnut, a lot softer than hickory and pecan. So what I did is I cut a slab of this wood, and what I'm going to do is I've turned a few of the pieces from certain sections of the wood, and we're going to talk about orientation there, and then I've left a few pieces on one of these. There's 3 or 4 pieces that I'm going to turn tonight, hopefully. So here's log 1. So when I'm looking at this log, first of all, everybody knows what the pith is. The pith is dead center here, the middle of the wood. The pith is where all your cracking is going to start. It's where all the tension is in the wood. And believe me, I've been there when I get that pith too close to the edge, try to put it in the middle of a piece and everything cracks. But free wood, throw it in the fireplace. And when this wood gets dry, it burns really hot. So if you burn it, don't get too close to the fireplace. So something you hear from people is there's going to be a natural crack. When you look at the end of a log, there's always, after a little time, one crack. In this particular piece of wood, it's right here. So coming right across here is this crack. I've heard a lot from people that say, I get this green wood, I cut it right down that crack and right through the middle of the pith. Well, if you cut right through the middle of the pith, you got a couple things. One, you have the pith in there where the tension is. But also, if you just cut that in half and turn it, you're going to turn away at least an inch of wood. And that's work. That's work. And there's some really good wood on, which I'll talk about in a second. So we got to get rid of that pith. Now, if we just cut it along that crack, you can see this wood. You can see that this high spot right here is way off center. And you have this kind of thicker area here. So we have I drew this circle. This is the heartwood. So it'd be, I'll just say the darker wood in the tree, the sapwood is going to be the lighter wood generally in trees that you see. This is the heartwood. We want to find, when we're turning a bowl, we want to find the sapwood is even. And the pith is somewhere close to the middle of what we're turning. When I look at this is going to be out of balance. So you got this real high spot here. Before I start turning, I'm going to pass out just a bunch of stuff just for you to look at and mess around. So what I did on this piece is I looked at this piece, and is everybody familiar with quarter sawn wood is? I'll go back to my beautiful drawing here. So these are the rings. This is the heartwood. So when wood is quarter sawn, it's going straight across like this. So if you cut this piece here and here, you have this really nice straight grain. And that gives you all these capabilities of making things with these wonderful straight lines through it when you start positioning it. We'll talk about that. And when you quarter sawn wood is where platters come from. So if you're looking at this particular piece, and remember, this is small, but if it's a huge piece of wood, and you look at this number 3 here, and you can see that that grain is straight across. So that's really nice quarter sawn wood. So if it's a huge tree, it's going to be way out to here. And that's where these guys that make platters cut their platters out of quarter sawn wood. Why quarter sawn wood? Because wood generally, when you look at these curves here, and this is an overgeneralization and somebody's going to, call me on it, but these rings kind of tend to straighten out. That's kind of the way wood dries. This happens to be very dimensionally stable wood. It doesn't move very much. But if you have something that moves a lot, you ever seen a green bowl and it's finished and it's dry and you have that kind of raised middle? So what happens is those rings kind of try to straighten out and that middle comes up. In quarter sawn wood, you're going to get very little movement. So when you have a big flat platter, you're going to get very little movement. So I look for these quarter sawn pieces, and I never turn huge wood. I just don't want to deal with it. It's too heavy, and so I'm always looking for some nice little pieces in there. So here's how I looked at this piece right here. Got to get that pith out of there. And the initial crack here is right across there. And you can see how out of balance everything would be here. You're really thick here, you're thin here, you're thick here, and your high spot's way over here. So I looked at this and said, piece number 1 for me, with the balances, is pretty good here with this spot high here. So that was piece number 1 that I cut. Number 2, and I did this just to show you as well, you can see how this is just about the same. You're pretty even. Your high spot's pretty close to centered on the pith, right down the middle. So you have your high spot here. I did make a bowl here, but I also could have taken this, and you see 2A and 2B. I could have cut this right here. And what this gives me is 2 natural edge bowls. One there and one there. And then here, I can do whatever I want. And I think here, that my score. Okay, so here what I did is from 1 here, I turned a natural edge bowl right there. So I went like that there. And then here on the other side, I turned, just a bowl. So I didn't do this. There's so many different ways to look at a log to make a bunch of different things. We'll talk about the balance in a second here. So now I have these quarter sawn pieces, 3 and 4. Now this is a little odd with this thing sticking up. So I've got this grain going like this, pretty good. So I probably would, if I'm going to make something, I'm going to cut it here. And I'll show you what number 4 we're going to make something out of, I think. But what happened here, and this is also important, you got to look for all your cracks and checks in this stuff. So I turned these around just to help a little bit today, make things a little quicker. But when I had this as one piece, however it was oriented, so I was thinking I've got this big piece of wood, And then I noticed, where's my, that over here there were these cracks. But the cracks actually were over here. So the cracks were in the middle here. I don't know. Yeah, the exact orientation I can't really figure out. But so I knew that I couldn't make the whole thing because these cracks were here. So I just split that thing in half. And I probably, even though those cracks only go in a little bit, you can see that because they're only to here, they only probably go to there. Then I can turn that off, make it smaller, but I don't want to work with cracked wood here. So I just cut that thing in half. So that's that log. These two bowls orientation, the orientation of these bowls. So with the natural edge bowl, I did this to show you guys something too. See that little white area there? Sometimes you got the bark on the wood and you got your chisel out and you're chunking away at the wood to get the bark off and you're going to turn a natural edge bowl.
More towards the center.
And you go too far and it's kind of tough to make a natural edge bowl. When natural edge, I don't care about the bark, but I went a little too deep, so I'd have to go a little, somehow sand or something down there. But when you turn, you always hear about balancing the two edges here and the two edges here. But you can't do that if you take this piece of wood out here somewhere. If you take it out of here somewhere, you can really never get to that. And that's this piece here. You want the center of this piece to be dead center. Not easy to do. Again, no two pieces are alike. So I can get a piece of wood and there's just enough going on in the piece of wood that I can do everything I want, everything I can about this. And that dead center is not going to be there. So it'll be off a little bit. What happened with this, so from the outside, wow, it looks great. But then from the inside, there's something wrong here. And because this center here, in a perfect world, I'd want dead center here. And it's just uncomfortable. When I look at a piece and things are like way off, it just doesn't seem like it's right. It's well turned and it's kind of a cool piece of wood with a big flat spot, on the outside. But, it just kind of didn't work. So we want to get, when you look in that bowl, if possible, you want to see just circles. This is funny that this piece of wood, for some reason, has, I don't know what it has in it, but that's what you want on a natural edge bowl, some way, shape, or form. You want those circles. And the pith on this one was over here. So that's positioned very well. So if you look at the bottom here, you can see that the hardwood is pretty round, so you know that's going to be positioned pretty well. On these, you kind of never know what you're going to get on a bowl, but we want the heartwood here, because remember, it was to the middle. We want kind of the same amount of heartwood on each side, just for balance. This one is kind of fun because it has a little smile in it or something. And that's just wood. And you're never going to find something perfect, but it adds some interest. So that's from that one. I did those on purpose a little deeper. And I'm going to spend another couple minutes and then we're going to get to some turning and you guys stop.
The question on the phone was, what do you do with the wood that you don't want?
The ones I don't. You know what? I look
What
for
do
a
you do
guy
with the
named
turnings you don't like?
The ones I don't like, I burn a lot of pieces, and I burn them quickly because people come into the fire where the fireplace is, and they go like, "Oh, that's so neat! I want that," and I go, "You can't have it." "Oh, it's so great!" I go, "No, I'll give you something good." But that one has been sitting at my house until today when I looked at it and said, "Maybe it's time to burn it." So more on the orientation with this one. Remember, I'm talking about shallow, but the log. So here, I keep showing you this one piece right here, but you have a long log. So this particular piece came out, it's quarter sawn, and it's just, instead of turning a small piece here, I basically went, let's say 1 and 2 into this wood and just turned a longer piece. So we'll get into some of the things you can do there. So instead of just turning one piece here sometimes, it's kind of nice to turn something in series. So the reason I numbered it 1, 2, 3, you can take your chainsaw if you have a long bar, and you can cut this long piece and then turn 1, 2, 3. But it's a little harder to do that. So what I do is I make sure to number it correctly, and I cut 1, 2, 3, and then I make one bowl here, one bowl here, one bowl here out of the same piece. So the orientation is going to be the same, and it's kind of nice to have a little series of pieces. Might go large to small, so that's kind of fun. So when you're looking at this piece of wood and you have this hardwood and sapwood, you have a natural line, which can be really to your advantage to make something neat. So that's that quarter sawn wood, remember? And so I orient, and this is that looking at the piece of wood, lining it up on the lathe. So you orient it so there's that nice stripe down the middle. So that's kind of fun. And I'll show you something here, the brown bag. So these two, so this one's quarter sawn, and this is on multi-axis. And because it's quarter sawn, the bottom has stayed flat and it doesn't rock. This one is a flat sawn piece that came out of the, did not come out of the log on the quarter sawn way. It came out of it just like a bowl, like that. So you can see that the rings are going this way. So those are going to try to straighten out. These rings are going to go like that. So what that's going to do is put a high spot here and here. So because this is not a quarter sawn piece, this one rocks. And why don't I wait till it dries and sand it off to make it flat? Because I'm just an impatient person. Sorry. So I wish I had a better answer. So take a look at all these if you want, and then we'll start playing around. And I have a lot of fun. You know, when I'm working on tool scales, I just make bowls. When I'm worried, literally, when I have a log outside and I go, boy, this thing's getting old and it's going bad, the creativity goes out the window and I just start making natural edge bowls, which are fun. They're good. Working on tool scales, making bowls. But I love taking these small quarter sawn pieces, and you'll see some of the limitless possibilities in there and what I'm going to make right now. But what I do with these little quarter sawn pieces. And we call them ring bowls, or where's our pendant maker? Pendant bowls. Where's Mo? We can call them whatever we want. First, we're going to do so this is a quarter sawn bowl here. So this came out right here. Where is that? Okay. Like that. So we're going to turn this and we're going to see what we can do, but we're going to change the axis on it and have some fun with that. We'll talk about the do's and don'ts of that. And most of them are don'ts, but we'll talk about why and how to make that work. Something that really helps me too, and I don't want to talk about brands and everything, but if you have some little round things are great. And if you can cut them yourself out of a piece of cardboard people use or whatever, this is manufactured piece. It really helps you just to pop an awl in here, go to your bandsaw and get it close, because you can also kind of judge and guide and see, okay, this is over the pith. This is over the pith. So I like messing with these. They give you a 3-inch to a 14-inch when they just need to give me a 5-inch to an 11-inch, really. So we're going to take this piece, and you can see there's your heartwood, there's your sapwood. And we're going to see what we can come up with. By the way, having a full face shield, sometimes I see people turning with just eye protection. And it's great to protect your eyes, but the rest of your face is valuable too. And things do fly, especially if you have some bark on the pieces that you're turning. These things every now and then decide they want to say hello. So I turn the lathe speed down. I'm not going to put on my thumb support. There's nobody here, all you youngsters out there, there's nobody with any arthritis in their hands or anything, I'm sure. That would be me. Who out here, if you're a bowl maker or you're doing kind of not spindle turning, who's used a 60-degree grind and who uses like a 40-degree grind? Anybody? Nobody uses any grind. You just take a blunt object and hit it. I kind of grew up as a wood turner using a 60-degree grind. Why? Because my first class, I go take a class from David Ellsworth, and that's what he teaches. It's funny how that works. Um, but I've been doing more on the 40-40 grind, and I'll do a little of each. But there's certain cuts that just work better with this 40-40. 40-40 meaning, I can't really see, but 40-40. And I'm not going to show you too closely because, like I said, I don't do a great job sharpening it. So even though this is round, it's going to be a little out of round when you put it back on the lathe. The first question is going to be how fast are you turning? Fast enough to do what I need to do, but not so fast that I'm scared. Very scientific. My lathe does not have a speed RPM meter on it. I just turn at whatever speed. And it's fun to turn on this because I go, oh, I thought I was turning it, 1200 and I'm only turning it 800. So we're going to get this to round and play around. If you really want to know, it's like a 1100. So we're just going to get it to round. And you notice my pressure is straight down and my hand is not on the tool rest. So the pressure is down, the control is with this hand, and then my body moving. So tool on my hip, going across. So now we got this to round. And what I'm going to do is put a tenon on the end of it, and then we'll start playing with it. If we just took this piece and I just took it, put a tenon on it, cut it down, and just made it a regular. I didn't finish the bottom, but that's what it'll look like with it. Nice stripe down the middle. And there's a lot we can do to play with it to make little different changes. And something about form in wood turning is a lot of people, want to do something new and different. And if you're talking about just wood, not painted and punched and sculptural, everything's been done, everything's been tried. You can go till the end of time and you're not going to turn something that hasn't been turned. So heck, just get in there and do it. But when you start doing multi-axis, it's limitless because every micro degree is something different that somebody hasn't done. So I'm going to put a tenon on there, turn it around and start. Well, when the tenon's on, we're going to do a little multi-axis thing first too. I'm still turning at the same speed. So here, I'm just flat, but tool handle down, and you can see when I'm cutting, it's not dust. I'm actually cutting, not scraping. We're going to undercut it. I have my jaws are dovetail jaws. Some people have straight jaws, so we're just going to undercut that a little bit. Try to get it. Okay, now I'm going to make a little step here. I might have to go in there with a little. I brought two tools, a lot of bowl gouges in that tool. The reason we have a lot of tools, and this is Mark Sperry says this, is one, because if somebody comes to take a picture of you, you look like a real big professional because you have all these different tools, and then to support the economy. And I'll bet every one of us has all these tools. It's fun. Tools are fun. So I just want to make sure that there's no. There, I used my second tool. That tenon's a little long. Your tenon can't you don't want your tenon to bottom out in your chuck jaw, so I have to make it a little shorter. Okay, so with this type, when I'm doing multi-axis, when I'm doing multi-axis, I could take, I don't, this center doesn't mean as much because I'm not trying to be dead center. So I'm going to take this off and I'm going to nip that off because I'm going to take this thing and take it off axis. Everybody understand? Got this axis and a different axis. So we do it the old-fashioned way with an old chisel bought on eBay. There's always something good on eBay. I'll try not to wipe out. And I don't give it too big a shot, by the way, because I have a leg under there. Just a little tap. I'm going to show you that. Doesn't have to be perfect. Okay, the knockout bar that we just found. And my chuck is right here. I'm going to need some help with some of this stuff. You can see I'm not going crazy about the size of the tenon and angle of the tenon because as long as it's a little undercut here and your angle is pretty close, when you compress it down, it's going to grip it pretty darn tight. Now, I'm not talking about a 15-inch bowl. I mean, these are little small things. But look out there. But it happens that that's a pretty good tenon. Has anyone tried to tighten it so hard that they snapped off the side of one of these things? That's Richard Raffin, who's this, the father of wood turning as an art. He turns this big hand, this long thing like this, which is nice because it gives you pretty good leverage. This doesn't give you a ton of leverage, but seems to work. So I said I wasn't going to do that, so I'm going to take it back out. Just seeing if you guys are still awake. So we got to do this multi-axis thing. This will only take an extra second. Okay. So I'm going to put it on the center here, and then randomly just pick a spot. So if I do that, so if I turn it this way, I'm going to be angling it, cutting across these two. I want to make it so when I cut the angle, it's somewhere along that line. I don't want it to be angled across. So I'm going to intentionally take this thing. I'm going to line it up there, and I'm going to put it off center. Now when you do this, turn your speed down. So sharp tools, small cuts. Be sure that the wood doesn't have any cracks, which, if there's cracks in your pieces and you're turning, you'll feel it. You feel a little tick, tick, tick. You'll know it. But when you tighten it down hard, you're not turning that fast. You have sharp tools to take small cuts. You're not going to have too much crazy going on. So there's one way to do it. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to just take this straight across. And when you're standing at the lathe, you won't be able to see it from there, but you'll see a shadow where there's no wood. Air wood, ghost wood, whatever you want to call it. Always turn it by hand to make sure that it's not hitting your tool rest. Again, something none of us have ever done. So, speed down. So we're getting a little, that's fine. So I'm going to use this gouge. So I'm just going to cut it straight across. So I've got this anchored here. So it's pretty solid what's going on here. What you'll notice in all of these pieces that are being passed around, I almost never make a piece with a straight line in it. A straight line and a piece of art or a piece of craft, it just doesn't have any, it doesn't have interest. So little arcs, little coves. So I'll be cutting this at a little arc. So almost never you'll see me cut a straight line. Because guess what? I don't think, there's some engineers in the room, but cutting a straight line, not easy to do. It'd be a lot more fun to go in there and take like a half an inch off every cut. Something else important, the cost of stopping your lathe and looking is zero. So stop, check, stop, check, stop, check, so you can see what's going on. So as you start to go to round, you see round, 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 and then you see these flat spots. So turn to those flat spots. I said don't turn flat. The pieces that aren't turned yet. So it's still kind of an oval because I haven't turned it all the way around. So I can feel now I'm in the wood. And when we get out to here, what's happening, why it's bouncing, is because you're turning from air to here. You can see. So so let's say the entry cut on any of these cuts, where's the sanding going to take place? It's always on that little entry cut because it's very difficult to keep it from bouncing. If you can do it, you're better than me, believe me. So we have this angle here. When you're doing multi-axis work, and this is this learning thing I'm talking about when there's no there. It's easy just to go like this and turn things all over the place and cut them. The hard thing is I want to get this, so I'm going to turn it this way, and I know what's going to happen when I turn it that way. Getting closer, but it's not at 100%, believe me. If I take this thing and just flatten it down from the top, what I'm going to do is I marked one, so with this one, which is what we're doing right here, the first thing I did is that. Number two is I'm going to turn it to the other side of the middle. So you can see we're going to get that angle there. Still no questions, no comments, no you're crazy, nothing like that. Anyone? Okay. That piece Charlie has there is kind of funny. That wood is from Vincent Price's boyhood home. And who cares? No one. But the funny thing is in some movie that he was in that I found on Amazon, he was turning vampire steaks. So he was a wood turner in some movie. So what did I do? I took the wood from his house and I made vampire killing steaks. So if there's any vampires in the room, look out. So we're back to the other side. And notice I'm not doing the same cut again because all I'll do is just change the angle and have the same thing. So I'm going to come down from the top now. And you can see if you put your finger there, I'm going to have it wide to narrow here. So it'll be a fun kind of multi-axis thing going on. Closed. when you're turning up to speed, don't stand here. We all know that. Just making sure we remember that. So anchored here, small cuts. Kind of start it close, open it up, and then slice. So now I'm into solid wood. You can see what's coming off here. Except I'm not past. I'm going to get past here. It's no problem. Why I'm changing this, so if you're here at an angle, you see where that tool is? It's hanging a little too far over. You really have no leverage here. You're straighter across. It's a little safer. So I'm going to angle it a touch. And we're going to bring this down a little more. Spin it to make sure it doesn't hit. Tighten her up. Only for your safety. So I'm wasting away wood here. See when I get out into that air wood, it starts bouncing. I can cut from outside in too. So we got this kind of wonky thing going on here. So what I'm going to do now is kind of shear scrape it to get these little rises out of here. Just a nice little small scrape here. And you can't do too much else because you got end grain here and you can't scrape it with a scraper. We have this going on here with the headstock. So notice I'm making a little curve there. Not straight. Okay. So we got this nice little weird thing going on here. So now I'm going to take it back to center. I'm not going to take it back to center. I'm going to put it in the chuck, turn it around, and make a bowl out of it. Now because, see what happened to center is now way over here. So your center's over here now. And that's kind of part of the fun of it. So the next step is the step that I just did before that I'm going to do again. I took a class, a wood turning class with a lady that was a physical therapist. And she said the biggest issue with wood turners is something tight, popping it with their hand, or they got their chuck in there and they're hitting it with their hand. And then they break a hand, break a thumb. She says she spends a lot of time working. So use something else to hit things with that are harder than your hand. Okay, so now I'm going to chuck it in here. And every cut that we're making here, it's gonna be bouncy. It's part of the deal. Okay, so we'll haul this thing out. I'm not leaving till we make another one of these either. So your Dodgers game can wait. Okay. Somebody's probably watching it now. So we're going to take off that nub. Just small cuts. So you can see, because the camera is there, as we start hollowing it here. And each cut's going to get closer to that short side. So we're going to pay attention to those cuts. So close, open it up, and swing the handle. I got to check out every time because I don't want to do this. I'm going to go a little deeper. So I got a big bite here, so I'm going to step back and take a smaller bite. So I think we can get a little closer to the edge if we'd like. That's not a great cut there, but take one more and we'll. So I'm rubbing the bevel here to pick it up, swinging the handle. Now this thing is turning, it's not that fast here because it's a small piece, but at dead center, it's 0 miles an hour. And this is one of the interestingly, it's a difficult cut to get this smooth. You can go in there with a scraper, if you want to smooth it out, but sometimes it roughs it out. Some kind of scraper, negative rate scraper. So now if you're going to sand this, something important. If you're just going to take a piece of sandpaper and put it on your hand, you're okay because this thing now is center. But there's going to be a tendency when you're sanding to pull it out and you're going to round that edge off. So if you're sanding the inside of anything and you're sanding it on the lathe, get a piece of leather, something thick enough that's not going to fold this way. So it'll be firm enough that it'll follow that contour and it won't roll that over. Just a little thought there. You are not stopping me at one piece unless you want me just to stop and do another one. So from here, I don't know how to use this lathe. So now we jam chuck it, and let's see what the sound effects. That's pretty good. That's a little homemade thingy. Should be good. Oh, I don't know. I'm going to get this thing off of there. Okay.
You need.
Well, I'm going to need a small something to pop that thing off there. Nah, we'll figure it out. A little bit of shelf liner. So we can do this straight, or we can also do it sideways and play around there too. You can cut just this at an angle, or you can get deeper into this and cut it all the way flat, and this will just rest flat. And because it's quarter sawn, now you see the lines? And that'll give it dimensional stability. There's some, whatever that means. So, if I'm looking at this, and I want to put another angle on it, what will I do? Is it better to tilt it this way and see more of this, if you're looking at it from table? Or is it better to tilt it this way? I like it that way. So we'll put it on here, line it up, And you'll see what I'm going to try to do. I'm always going to take my finger and do this because I want to make sure. There's something I didn't do. What did I forget to do? Check how deep that bowl is. How much do I have to cut away? Technical term, a lot. But maybe not enough. We're going to find out. So, going back in that same hole, so the angle is going to be the same from some standpoint. So I have my finger here, and I'm just saying, where's it going to cut? So that's going to drop the sapwood. I mean, the heartwood, it's going to drop it way down at an angle. Which I think I said, didn't I say that's what we wanted to do? If not, it's not what we wanted to do. Turn the speed down. So you're not getting too much play. The piece is really small, but you don't want to be trying to take big hunks out of this thing. I'm just kind of working my way. See what we got. There's something you can see here. Because of the way you're cutting, you're almost doing hollowing a bowl, but you're hollowing it to the edge. And you can see there's that arc there. Wait, is the camera showing? It's hard to see, but there's a little arc cut. So you have to cut it deep enough that you cut it straight, or you sand it later. See, that's cutting. I mean, that's shaving, it's not dust. So I still got a little bit of a spot here, and we're going to have a funnel soon. It'll be great. Okay, so you get the idea there because before they get kicked out by the contractors, constructors. So what I would do there is I would turn that smaller. People take these things off different ways. You can take a saw, flush cutting. You don't have to even get flush. You can cut it, have a little grinder or sand it off. Some people turn it very small and then shut the lathe off and pop that thing off. Or you just, you saw it off here and you take a chisel. Which is a little riskier and having tear out on the bottom of your piece. So let me get another piece up here because you can see what this is. And you hear in wood turning all the time, even walls, even thickness. But if you're making a bowl, absolutely. Sometimes you're going to get cracking if you have thick areas and thin areas, or if it's just too thick. Because this is quarter sawn and it's really stable wood, I would bet that that's not going to crack. Okay, let's just do a simple one. If you're concerned about catches on these things, just use a drive center without these spurs, so it doesn't dig in. And if you're cutting too big, if you have a catch, it'll just spin. So show how that works. Again, this has a nice little stripe through it. And the one that I just did and I'm passing around, you can see, we're going to do this one just the opposite way. So remember we talked about the orientation of this one, even though it's quarter sawn, is kind of what a natural edge bowl would be. Michael's not here, blind woodturner friend who's unbelievable. But when you're sanding, when you're cutting, and you're looking for humps and bumps, close your eyes. You're feeling. And the sensitivity, you feel things much better when you're not looking at it. And And he has the best feel of anybody I've ever seen. And he just touches everything and he feels it. He feels every hump and bump and everything. Close your eyes and feel, which is nice. Okay, we're not removing this. So you wanted me to just to do a flat one, or we'll just mess around with some other multi-axis thing to show you that you all can do it. Mess around. Life's about messing around. Kurt Vonnegut had this thing. He was going to the post office for his wife, and he'd go and he'd buy one envelope, and she'd say, "Why don't you just buy a box of envelopes, and you don't have to go every day to the post office?" And he said, when I go to the post office, I meet somebody, I see a dog, stop at the coffee shop, make a friend. He said, "We were put on this earth to fart around." So, something to think about. So I'm going to flatten off the bottom, and then we're going to go and do something a little different. We're going to cut our first angle. See, I'm cutting it a little concave, and that's going to make sure that it rests on the jaws of the chuck. You do not want it convex. If there's space between the tip of the jaw here and the wood, no matter how good your fit is here, if there's a little space there, it'll wobble. And then it'll wobble more, and then it'll wobble more, and then it'll be on the ground. Hopefully you won't be. So we're going to make our first cut for grins at this first axis. And some of these multi-axis pieces you'll see that are turned, and if you're on Instagram or whatever, you'll notice that they're only turned on two axes. It looks like they're doing this all day, but they're not. Got to figure out how this lathe works. Okay. So we're going to make this really simple. It is not that hard. Everyone in this room can do it. If I can do it, I promise you, you can. Okay, so in doing that, I'm going to take this angle off of here. Why? Why not? It's a very scientific measurement. I am one. So your drive here, what is it, half an inch? So I can either put the tip of that, I learned this from one of the best turners in the world, this French guy. I can put the tip here in the line that was left from the drive center, or I can put the outside of the drive center on the line. So half a drive center, full drive center. This isn't really engineering, it's feel. And I don't pull rulers out and stuff very frequently. Is that a decent answer? He asked how far I'm actually taking it off center. It doesn't take that much off center to make something happen. And I'm doing it. Not only am I going to take it off center, I'm going to drop it. So you stop me now. I'm going to try something that I have no clue what's going to happen. What's not going to happen is this is not going to get hit. That I know. And I'm not going to do it on purpose, but if I cut too much, you'll see it'll just spin. Nothing will tear out. It'll just spin. It's a good safety thing if you want. Small cuts, sharp tool. I came up with this. It's not like I invented anything, but there's a guy, a German guy, And I go, wow, this stuff's cool. And I emailed him and he says, you're doing good. He said, just keep doing it. That's how you're going to learn. I said, boy, thanks for all the help. So I take back what I said about every Woodturner going to help me. And then I started looking at his pieces and he goes into his show and I've got these little things and his pieces are like this big. I'm going, oh my goodness, how is he doing this? And when I talk about infinite possibilities, just this and a little of this, and I didn't pay that much attention to the orientation, which is what this whole demonstration was supposed to be about, so my apologies. So you notice it's not dust coming off, so I'm cutting. Yeah, there's shavings. Okay, so this could be fun. All these things I'm making, and it would have been like five, but he told me that we're going to get arrested, like we're robbing this place, so I can only make two. They're all part of the raffle. That's okay. I'm sure that they have some quarters or some a Quonset hut somewhere around here. I don't know why I have this, but for sanding flat work or flat pieces, cork is great because it gives just enough give. But good luck finding sheets of cork. So this will help me center it because this tenon's very small. I mean, very short, shallow. So this piece isn't gonna, I don't think, bottom out. Now we're good. Okay. So now we're gonna hollow this thing out. See what Mr. 4040 does here. I'm gonna stabilize the lathe. Usually lathes on wheels, they but again, I'm turning like a 3-inch piece of. So tool closed, open, handle down, and then it starts peeling. We're getting that bounce, not because I'm not on the bevel, because there's nothing flat around here, or maybe because this tool's still. The good thing about these tools is that there's enough contour to this whatever to the handle that it doesn't roll. Because when your tool rolls off your lathe, it always goes this way, and if it doesn't hit your foot, you have to resharpen it because it hits the concrete. If you go past this, is there a camera that comes this way?
Yeah.
What's fun is if you cut past here, you end up with a moon. So then you tell whoever you give it to, it's like, you're my son and you're my son and my moon. I made a moon. You never say you made a mistake. So not the cleanest cut, but anybody have any questions about this orientation thing? But again, it's funny that so this line going straight across is pretty cool. And the reason the circle's here is because remember when I canted it off axis here, I didn't just do it this way. I did it this way and this way and this way. So we will jam check it, see what we've got. Let's see how much beef we have down here. And again, because it's quarter sawn, you're going to be fine. But these things, you don't need to put anything on there. So we can do it straight across, or we can play some more. We could go steeper. We could do it sideways. Let's do something. That's what we're here for. So we'll see what happens here. Oh, that's too much. That would have gone into through the, that would have gone through this little side here. I want my tenon, but I think I can get it tight enough that it's not going to go anywhere too fast. Stop. Okay. Let's see what happens here. I'm going to make a donut for you guys. Has anyone here ever made a funnel lampshade? Does anyone not exactly? Okay, small cuts, tight, tight, sharp tool. Whoa, too big a cut. But because there's nothing digging in there, who cares? This is a nice design element. Does that look flat? Not quite there. There's still a little hump there. So, see what we can do. You see on some of the pieces we were passing around that I cut little bevels underneath. I do a lot of that on things that I make. Just cut a little bevel on the bottom. It just gives it a little lift off the table. And it kind of helps out on the top and the bottom. Some of these little things that I'm making it right now. A little more to go. Again, I'm not going to take the bottom off. I'll let whoever takes this home. I didn't make a great cut in here, but so what happened? Just a bunch of goofy stuff. So here's one that I just did just flat, and there's kind of something neat. Again, not my idea. These guys online I had mentioned this Havelock is I went right up to that edge. You just knock that edge off. So it's not sharp, but it just is kind of cool. Just a nice, very simple. And then you take that bottom off. Kind of nice. And it's fun. This one, I turned it too steep of an angle. And to get to the base, I couldn't get deep enough without cutting the thing in half. So that's when you act like you actually did that on purpose. You tell somebody exactly what I was trying to get done. Anything else? Oh, here's we talked about doing bowls consecutively. And this is an example. I don't even know how it's oriented, but this is one, and I could turn one very similar right next to it. I hope the screen, you've been able to see things on the screen. One of the hardest parts of demonstrating is figuring this thing out. Those of you that have demonstrated, if anybody wants this wood, they can have it. You notice these little things here. That's the ash borer, I'm pretty sure. Because the ash borer is between the bark and the cambium layer of the wood, and they dry out between the bark, and that's why the tree dies. And you have these little racetrack things all over the place. If anybody wants to turn these, they can. It's very expensive wood. Um,
All right, thank you.
Thank you.